Welcome to Growth Colony, Australia's B2B podcast. I'm Alex from Xgrowth. Each episode, we bring you B2B founders, CMOs, marketing and sales leaders to find out what makes them successful and what was behind their failures, or as we like to call them, hard-learned lessons. If you enjoy the episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and share the pod with a friend you think could get value out of it. And of course, make sure to join the community Slack channel at growthcolony.org/Slack. That's enough from me though, let's dive right in.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. I'm Shahin Hoda with Xgrowth, and today I'm talking to Alex West, Chief Executive Officer at Swoop, about how B2B leaders can and should prepare their business for an acquisition. The market is quite hot. There is a lot of acquisition and mergers happening in the current market, so this is a very timely conversation. I'm super excited to talk about this with Alex. Alex, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
No, absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. So, Alex, Swoop, you and Swoop have been going through a series of acquisitions, expanding the business, very exciting stuff. I'd love to hear from your side. You know, you've been involved in all these acquisitions. What do you look for in an organization when you're looking to make an acquisition?
Look, obviously your point before was very correct. There's both now and there typically has always been a lot of M&A activity and consolidation in the industry that I'm in telecommunications. I've had, I think it's roughly 50-something integrations under my belt now at various stages of the acquisition, and now obviously as CEO I'm taking a more front lead, recently acquiring 4 businesses since listing in May. So it's been a very busy journey for us. Typically what we look for, particularly in the very early days of our sort of M&A journey, you look for like-minded companies. So it's mostly a cultural and business fit to what we're looking for. And in terms of those companies, look, we want to see growth, or either growth currently or growth that we see together that we can achieve. So the main focus for us is early days adding growth. And then what we add to that, obviously, we're publicly listed, we can help accelerate that growth. And also looking, as I said, like-minded individuals that want to come along for the journey. So we're not a large enough company to completely swallow the companies. We need founders and leaders to come along with us and add to our capability and scale in terms of what we do.
Got it. Right. That makes sense. You know, are there? I know you've made both B2C and B2B acquisitions, organizations that have a B2C and a direct-to-consumer and a B2B focus, but overall, are there certain characteristics that you look for and it's more attractive to you? And the reason I ask that is, one of the things that I hear quite often in the M&A space is how can businesses create these reoccurring models versus one-off kind of project-based deals. Is that something that is on your radar when you're looking at organizations as well?
Absolutely. I mean, we see growth in recurring revenue. Our whole business model is ultimately that. So we're looking for something that's going to add to that and keep that going. We're not set up for project-based. So ideally, yes, we want to see a company that's growing both organically and, with reoccurring revenue, so that they're not having to put, excessive effort in, day out to continue that growth. And if they sort of stop, then the whole thing sort of falls apart, because acquisitions and integrations are very distracting. And we need to make sure that when we do a transaction that we're not breaking a business in doing so. And obviously that reoccurring growth model is what we're looking for. The other things we look for, and it can be one of two things. It's either they do something better than what we do. So we're looking for that product and that allows us to grow, because in telecommunications, you can either be very specific or you can offer a range of products. Our current business model is we're looking to add to our product mix so that we can better serve our customers through sort of that cross-sell opportunity as well. Our recent acquisition, Voice Hub, being an example of that, where we're adding to our voice platforms, because particularly when business customers buy a telecommunications service, they really just want that one-stop shop. And so bringing Voice Hub along for the journey, it adds to our product mix and allows us to better service our existing customers and also attract new customers as a result.
Interesting. Okay, got it. So expanding those service offerings is quite key. Now, a lot of our audience and people who are listening to podcasts are in the sales and marketing space, right? And I wanna hear from your side. Let's unpack this a little bit. What do you look at what is important for you from a sales and marketing standpoint? I mean, we talked about growth a little bit, but let's unpack that a bit more.
Look, I rely quite heavily on my sales and marketing leads. The one thing where we know you need to have strong people in those spaces to make sure that they know the customers, they know who they're selling to, they know what the value proposition is. You can't be too wishy-washy with this thing. You have to be very targeted and focused. Otherwise, you're just throwing money at various different, experiments. We're looking for someone that's probably past that experimental stage, that knows what drives customers, and it's simply just, apply more resource and you get more results, because that's ultimately what we can provide. So be it capital or more resources to be able to accelerate somebody's growth that they're going through.
Got it. You said you don't want it to be wishy-washy. Tell me a bit more about that. What does that mean?
Look, I'm an engineer, so I typically run by the numbers, and I expect my sales and marketing arms to do the same. So it's particularly like return on investment. $1 in equals how many sales, and so on and so on. It can't be it's not about getting awards. It's not about having the best brand. It's about driving sales and attracting customers and those sort of things. And, having the numerical results to do it. And I have a great team that does that for me. So.
Got it. What about in terms of the niche that they operate or the area that they focus on, right? So you talked about how it's really important to focus on, you talked about a little bit around focus and value proposition. Is it more appealing to you when an organization has a broader reach and they target a lot of people, or it's more attractive to you when they go after one very specific niche and they laser focus on that?
Yeah, to be honest, it can be both, as long as they're good at it. So we're looking for someone, if it is just purely targeted, and some of our acquisitions have been that, exactly targeted regionally, like geographically, or targeted with a particular product. They are, ultimately what we've looked at first, because they're bolting on to what we do. As we get bigger, through acquisition and organically, we are also, we've added capability and scale and a cost base to our own company that we can start to look at those wider companies that are looking at a number of different things, because, adding those to us will actually just lower their cost base and we get better synergies from it and so on. But initially, you're right, it is about laser focus, because, we're adding capabilities to things that we don't necessarily do, or into areas that we're not necessarily in at this point in time, areas being geographically. So.
Got it. Okay. There are a lot of B2B founders who are part of our audience as well. And I would like to explore, and I want to hear kind of your advice for those individuals. They could be, running a kind of boutique company. It could be maybe a larger one, but they might be thinking about acquisition, and might be thinking about acquisition in 5 years' time, might be thinking about acquisition in 2 years' time. How can business directors better prepare themselves and their organization before an acquisition?
Sure. I mean, it works in two directions. They're either acquiring or being acquired. So you sort of have to make the decision about how you wish to grow your own business. And it is exactly as you said. You have to have a vision for what is this going to look like in 5 years. Are you growing your business to a point where you're looking to make an exit, or looking to get bigger and sort of pull back a little bit? Because being a founder is incredibly time consuming. You have no time for anything else, no family, nothing. It is just about the business. So a lot of the acquisitions we've done to date have been providing opportunities for people to not so much step out, but step back from the pressure, and providing more resources around that. So in terms of preparing themselves, the simplest thing is know your business and know your numbers. When we come in, we have to do valuations very quickly, because there's obviously a lot going on. We don't want to waste people's time. So they have to know what their numbers look like, their revenues, their customers, how they're growing, and all those sort of things. So investing in, and a number of companies I've sort of suggested, is investing in good accountants or good CFOs or CFO type people is something you probably want to do before you step down that acquisition, looking for someone to acquire you, or even for you acquiring someone else. So it's somewhat counterproductive to most people that are sales and marketing leaders, and just if you're just selling every day, it's still not enough. You need to make sure that you have good finances and everything's in order.
I love that. So make sure your finances are in order. Do you have some stories that like sales and marketing is killing it, and then the numbers are absolutely in the trash?
Absolutely.
Give me some stories.
Look, I think most businesses in growth will experience a cash drain. So as you're putting more money into marketing, you're seeing your sales numbers go up. You have there are countless stories, both from my education and in you do business degrees, and they'll explain it to you that at some point you will run out of money and you have to have a plan for that. Not so much companies that we acquired. All of the companies that we've acquired have been very cash generative, but I have obviously been in acquisitions before where without an injection of cash capital we were bringing, that business would have gone under. So you have to know where your money's coming from, and just because you're selling every day doesn't necessarily mean you're making money. Hopefully business founders know that if I'm teaching someone this story, then I'm the wrong person. But it's that is mostly what we see. People that grow too fast can grow themselves out. And look, we can obviously assist with that because we're able to generate capital either from debt or from equity markets and help accelerate that growth. But you don't want to be in a position where you want to be in a good position when you're negotiating. You don't want to be desperate.
Yeah, I hear you, and you're usually you don't negotiate during the good times. It's during the bad times that you start negotiations sometimes, and then you're in the red.
Most of our acquisitions have been unsolicited, so we've approached based on. So they haven't been expecting an acquisition. They may have been previously approached and never thought it was a good idea or not a good fit. So you have to almost be ready at any time. You don't know when someone's going to knock on your door, and I tend to approach more people that I know through the industry, 20-something years in telco. I'll make a couple of phone calls and get in contact, and people will be like, well, I wasn't expecting this, and then they will at least go through that valuation process. And that's probably the other thing when you said, what do you need to prepare for? Know what you want out of this. So, the valuation process, you have to have a number in mind that would be this is the point in time that I'm happy to either step away or hand over the thing that I'm growing.
So when you say have a number in mind, is that, are you saying, hey, I should have a number in terms of a dollar figure, or I should have a number in terms of a multiplier that I think the business is worth? What do you mean by that?
Ultimately, it's a dollar figure at some point in time. So it might be, if in 5 years' time I want to walk away from this business with, $10 million in my pocket, and that would be what would make me happy to then go do something else or whatever that happens to be. It's not necessarily always cash, because being public, we have the advantage of being able to use our script for as part of transactions evaluations, and that's what we do. People come on board, take some script and some shares, and they grow with us, and so that they're adding to the business and they're growing with the business, and they're both helping us grow, but they're also helping their own personal wealth grow as well at the same time. So it's a win-win for all of us, and it keeps people motivated.
What are some of the strategies that you've come across that improves a multiple of revenue for or profit or EBITDA for a company? Like, do you just look at everything and say profit with a certain multiplier, or that multiplier changes based on different businesses and business models that you look at?
It does change based on business models. They're not always the same. Typically, we're acquiring companies at around the 3 to 5 EBITDA multiple, and we use EBITDA because it's the best representation for cash the cash generative that we'd be looking for. Also, we're an infrastructure-based company, so it makes more sense to us we report to the market that way. That's what we're sort of focusing on when we're explaining how our business runs to other people. So we sort of look for that like-minded thing. As companies get bigger, as the valuations go higher, we generally expect that the multiples might also increase, because there's not as many companies out there. And so typically we might see a multiple move up to sort of 6 or 8 times EBITDA. But there are other ways of doing it. If a company's not yet achieving that EBITDA line, you may look at revenue. I've seen companies acquired off revenue base, so it's a much lower multiple, typically 1.1 to 1.2 times. It wasn't an acquisition that we did, but it was one that in our industry we've seen. Or if you're already public, then obviously it's much easier to value. You're just looking at premium and those sort of things. But I'm pretty sure there aren't as many of those that are available.
When you say that a company gets larger, right, because there are fewer of them out in their market, what is your definition of getting larger?
Well, I said larger for us. I mean, we're typically we have been acquiring companies up to that $1 to $2 million EBITDA range on a recurring basis, so on ongoing basis. As we start to push to 5 to 10 times, you see multiples start to shift up, because there aren't as many companies that are running well and in our space that have that sort of multiple and would be available for a transaction.
Got it. And being available for a transaction is probably the key component as well. we've talked about a lot of bunch of red flags that you kind of see when you're looking at an organization to acquire, right? We've talked about knowing their numbers. We talked about growth. Are there any other red flags that comes to your attention when you're doing in your due diligence?
The people's probably the last one that you need to consider. I've seen integrations fail because people weren't aligned, and having a view of what the organisational structure is going to look like, in that first day after the transaction, potentially then also the 100th day or a year from now becomes important. And if you can't see yourself working with the other person, walk away before that happens. And I think the integrations I've seen and the transactions that ultimately fail several years down the track are mostly about people and culture. So you might have a good business that's generating cash and doing the right thing, but you try and put two businesses together that aren't aligned, or people aren't just going to be focused on the same thing, you're going to end up with something that never quite achieves what you originally set out to do.
Right. So make sure you know your numbers, make sure you can show growth, make sure your EBITDA is in good health. And then lastly is the people piece. I think the people piece is a very interesting point, because a lot of organizations don't realize that until it's too late, I feel. Like, your financials, you get it. The person who's talking to you, like, your financials are not in place. And that's the end of the discussion. Or you don't have the growth, or you don't have this. But the people piece is something that will blow up in your face down the track rather than at the beginning. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. And you can never really realise it 100% of the time. But I said that what you do on day one will help assess that. So if you're not likely to get on with if I'm not likely to get on with the founder, and we probably won't get to DD, but say we do, for example, if it's not going to be a good mix, or we believe that we're running the company separately, or not with the same alignment in how we treat our staff, or which markets we want to go to, we're far better off not doing the transaction than continuously fighting, for a year down the track and things like that. So as I said, I've seen mergers fail or acquisitions fail as a result of that.
Alex, this has been a very interesting conversation. I think we've touched on some very interesting points. I have a couple of rapid fire questions that I want to ask you, but before I get to that, is there anything else that you think we should cover when it comes to acquisition, things for people to prepare, or things to know, and things that are important to you that I haven't covered or I haven't asked?
It's probably just making sure whenever you consider it that it's the right time for you in the business. It is very distracting. You have to answer a lot of questions about your business whilst trying to run your business at the same time. So make sure you're ready. I would always be open to opportunities. You never know when someone's going to offer you something that you never thought you would get for your own business. So, always be open, but also if you decide to go down that path, make sure you're ready, because obviously whoever's trying to acquire you is also very busy as well. So we expect, things to happen quite quickly once we get to that stage.
Got it. No, great points. Solid points. That's I've never been part of one, but I have heard how exhausting it can be to go through that process.
And look, and it's easier for me. I have a team of people, and we're acquiring much smaller companies that don't have the same resources. So sending lawyers and accountants and tax advisors and everything else, asking lots of questions. And whereas someone on the other side is in a room full of 5 other people trying to put answers together. So it can be. But look, they've all been successful. And they've all been good so far. So
awesome. All right. I want to ask some rapid fire questions. The first question is, what is one resource? It could be a book, a blog, a podcast, a talk, whatever it is, that has fundamentally changed the way you work or live.
Simon Sinek's golden rule, the why sort of thing. So he did a TED talk.
Yeah.
That one of my now sort of head of sales, or one of my executive directors, introduced me to years ago. And that sort of changed the way we look at, how we build a culture of companies and those sort of things. So why are we here? And, when we acquire someone, we want to understand what their why is.
Got it. Love it. Number 2, what if you could go only give one advice to B2B founders or business leaders, what would it be?
Know where your cash is coming from.
Love it. Okay. Yeah. Cash flow is king. And all right. Sounds good. Number 3, are there influencers in your space, in leadership, or in sales and marketing, or in some of these areas that you follow quite closely?
I have great mentors around me, so I obviously always suggest that. So I work with people that I've worked with for many years. So I've got the likes of James Spenceley and Tony Grist that are well experienced in this space. They're also very active, so you're welcome to follow them. In the sales space, not so much. To be honest, it's something I'm also learning as we go. So I've previously been an operational engineer and the COO before I was CEO. So if you have any advice for me or any of your listeners do, I'd be more than happy to. I spend most of my time reading about sales and marketing now than I do anything else.
Oh, really? Well, why is that?
I said my career came up through, one, I love to learn, but I grew my career through operations management and running companies that way. So COO or head of operations to COO to then CEO. So the one part I've worked alongside some very great sales leaders, but I also need to learn how to motivate very good sales leaders.
Got it. No, that's a very interesting point and fascinating. Okay, question number 4 actually. 4, we're last one. What is something that excites you about the B2B space today?
Look, we work in an industry that is forever changing. So B2B, particularly around telco, we have what's a once in a lifetime career, like a company or technology changing event with the NBN coming on board. So at some point over the previous 2 years and the next 5 years, everyone will change their service provider in one way or another. So there's a massive opportunity for us. And that's why we're very excited in this space. And we're playing in a technology that's slightly different than what's available to everyone else in regions that not everybody is going for. So we're focusing on regional Australia and the lack of quality services there or potential quality services there. So what's exciting for us in B2B is almost every single business now, and there's over 1 million businesses that have fibre available for the first time at a reasonable price through what's effectively a somewhat subsidised market. So massive change for our industry. So very exciting, and it's about getting involved.
I'd imagine, and no wonder the crazy growth that Swoop is experiencing. Alex, really appreciate you coming on the podcast. This has been an absolute blast to chat to you, and I'm sure a lot of the business leaders and founders out there are going to take a lot out of this. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving us that 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and sharing the pod with a friend. If you'd like to continue the conversation, please make sure to join the community Slack channel at growthcolony.org/Slack. growthcolony.org/Slack. Thanks again for all the support, and we're looking forward to seeing you again in the next one.